Okay, welcome. Today I wanted to offer some reflections about childhood trauma and how we can sometimes get lost in the spiral of negativity which is going on in the outside world, and what we can do. What can we do to start to shift that around? Okay, enjoy. So, over the last couple of weeks, thanks to the support of my wife, I have noticed that I had been in a bit of a spiral for a few months, focusing on a lot of the negative which is going on in the world. And I notice when I do that is that I can start to spiral down. I can start to see all the bad that is going on and start to lose hope a bit. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that and just how that links into childhood trauma. And especially what I've started to do just to shift this around and move back into a more joyful place. So if we look at trauma, if we imagine that when we have some form of childhood trauma, say if we've got an insecure attachment, meaning that our parents haven't been around, or it wasn't a safe place, we create this port. And this port it's like it's an unsafe place, or the world is not safe, or the belief I'm not good enough, or some other belief there. Yeah. So when we get older, often what we do is that we then almost attract these behaviors, these relationships, these jobs, partnerships to fill that port, until we do some inner work and we go, oh, this is the childhood trauma, and we start to fill that with something more wholesome, secure attachment. But the reality is, it's a bit like an addiction, is we have to be aware that there are going to be certain times and certain things that it means we're more susceptible to negativity. So there is research in this book by Emma Seppala, who is a Harvard-trained, Stanford. She's a Stanford professor, and she talks about this idea of negativity bias. And the idea behind this comes from Roy Baumeister and other researchers, which says because our ancestors had to survive in the wild, those that were more frightened, who were more aware of things, were worrying about where we should go, who were more negative, they were the ones that survived. It was like our ancestors passed this gene on to us, that we have a propensity to worry more, to be focused more on the negative. And they point out in this research, it was Shelley Gable and Jonathan Haidt point out that it's 3/4 of our experiences are positive. So 75% are positive compared to 25% are negative. But often it's the flip. It's often, I've heard the word up to 70% is negative. And so, especially if we've been through some form of trauma, we're more susceptible to that negativity. We're susceptible to, the world's not a safe place, because it wasn't as a child. So what we do is we search for these things outside of ourselves. And one of the ways we do that is through the media. And I notice I can do that is I can notice we've had the last few weeks riots in the UK. And I've been looking at this going, that's really upsetting. And then hearing the stories about, what's been happening, and it feels really sad. And because of that negativity bias, I can then spiral into really spending a lot of time looking at this stuff. And there is a fascinating study into the Boston Marathon bombings. I can't remember when it was, the bombings itself. But essentially they did some research and they found that people who watched the Boston bombings on TV for 6 hours were more traumatized than those people who were actually in the bombing themselves. This is incredible. So just watching it on TV for 6 hours was more traumatic than watching, but actually being there. So this is important for us to note, especially if we are susceptible, because of childhood trauma, to that negativity bias. And, this is a human condition, full stop. So therefore, I feel we need to begin with really focusing on filling ourselves with the positive. If our propensity is just to focus on the world's not safe, we need to start focusing on the world is safe. And a quote from Einstein, he said, "The most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe." So if you start to believe it's a friendly universe, that is what you start to see. So it's to make that decision. I decide now. I've always thought it was a hostile because of this childhood. Now I choose to see it as friendly. One of the ways we do that is we just start to filter the conversations we have. When you go onto YouTube, before you click into the app, go online, have a sense of what do I want to look at. So you are the curator of the information rather than YouTube being the curator. So you work out, okay, yeah, I want to study this. Write it down. And then when you go on, immediately what I do is I will look through the top 10, 15 things they suggest. And if it's something I'm not interested in, which is fear-based or, something I don't want to see, I'll press the 3 dots and I will just say, not interested, not interested. And I'll go through and filter them out. Then the second thing I do is then go through my list and I go, I want to learn about meditation. I want to learn about Buddhism, the Dalai Lama, happiness. I want to learn about breath work. And therefore it filters it. It's going to feel strange at the beginning because we're used to and we are addicted to, as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, to the stress hormones. So at the beginning it's going to feel like, I want to learn. And yes, it's important for us to be aware of what is on the news, but really we need to be aware of maybe 1%, 5%, 10%. I've spoken in other videos about controlling the controllables. Can I control what's happening there? No. What can I control? I can control my own inner state. And then this comes back to Viktor Frankl in his book Man's Search for Meaning. And he was a psychologist who was in the Holocaust, in the concentration camp. And he realized that nobody could make him think anything that he didn't want to. And this is someone who's in the concentration camps. So really reflect within yourself. Think, what do I want to feed myself with? So I think that's really, really important. What you look at. I've lost my train of thought a little bit. The other thing is, it's like, be aware of the media. It's like BBC, Channel 4, if you're in the US, is that it is not a trauma-informed media at the moment. I believe 50% of the top 100 journalists in the UK have been to private schools. I don't know how many of them have been to boarding school, but I know Piers Morgan, I know that Jeremy Clarkson has, many of the BBC, certainly BBC Director has, Alan Davey, I think, the head of the Channel 4. So what this means is that because they have that port of trauma, the world's not safe from childhood, this is my hypothesis, I don't know if it's true, they're going to put that out into the world. It's frightening within them. And so therefore we need to really be the guardian of the threshold. What am I going to feed myself? Am I going to watch something uplifting or something which is going to really fill this port and take us down into that spiral and into addictions, into those things? So we need to just be aware of the threshold. What else? Yeah, Rupert Murdoch as well. He was at boarding school. Jeremy Clarkson had a terrible time at boarding school. You know, his vinyl records were stuck together. Someone defecated in his tuck box. What else happened to him? He was stuck in cold bath every half hour, something like that. That's what he wrote in the Times article. So it's just interesting. And yeah, I think the final bit I'll just share about is just some tips. So, you know, what can you do? You know, I've mentioned about YouTube. You know, you just kind of the three dots, just not interested, not interested, not interested, and then you start to put in, okay, yeah, what do I want to learn about? You know, you can put the bell icon on for the videos that I do. You know, what else is there? And, you know, another thing is just disconnect from your phone. You know, read books. You know, I love reading books. I read about an hour a day, half an hour to an hour, and it's just like, wow, it's so fascinating. You know, and you can get into, you know, this is a wonderful book, The Happiness Track, or this book here, The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. This is another great book, Happy for No Reason. I'm working on a course at the moment about happiness, so I'm kind of deep in happiness at the moment. But yeah, this is how we do it. We kind of balance that out. So we cultivate happiness. We cultivate those things which do bring happiness. You know, if I finish with a quote from the Dalai Lama on page 4, he says, generally speaking, one begins by identifying those factors which lead to happiness and those factors which lead to suffering. Having done this, one then sets about gradually eliminating those factors which lead to suffering and cultivating those which lead to happiness. That is the way. You know, so the suffering for me, yes, become aware of the news, but if we indulge in it, we get lost in it, then that leads to suffering and certainly attachment. That's a big thing of Buddhism, is tanha, craving. That's the second noble truth, is right, attaching to something. Yes, that's true, or pushing it away. So we just need to become aware of that. And the things which really help lead to happiness, kindness, love, compassion, you know, meditation, exercise, gratitude, all of these things, community, lovely connection with our families, our loved ones. And these are the things that really, really help. So, yeah, it's lovely to go through this. I do love the subject of happiness, mainly because I, as a teenager in my 20s, struggled so much with depression. This is, yes, we can cultivate happiness. It is something that is within us, and it's just we've had that squashed, and therefore we can open. We have also a port of happiness. This is our innate being. You know, Dalai Lama begins that book by saying the purpose of our life is to seek for happiness. So, okay, thank you so much. This Friday I've got a podcast with a guest talking about his parents. They went to boarding school, how that impacted him, and, you know, essentially the neglect that he went through. Fascinating. Then the week after that is Nick Duffel, talking about the importance of group work. And then the week after that is a psychologist from Australia, Rosalind Snyder, talking about how we heal. I've had some great conversations these last few weeks, and I got lots more lined up. So yeah, blessings to you all, and yeah, please do comment below. Great to hear if these reflections are supportive. Okay, take care. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.